What's up, guys? The day this video is released, the winner of the Stargirl competition is going to be announced, so I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and dissect the score that I made and shed some light on how I approached my score. So let's hop inside and check it out. Alright guys, now that we're inside, let's go ahead and take a look at a little bit of a breakdown of the score here. So let me just zoom out so you can see all the different elements going on here. You've got a lot of automation and stuff, as well as some samples and some of my own compositional elements as well. I've tried to integrate a lot of different types of things to provide a lot of contrast, especially considering that the scene itself has a lot going on, and I feel like there's a lot you can do with superhero type of things, so I think that there are some liberties you can take with that as well. So right off the bat, in the first couple seconds, basically with my score, I have started out with like a baseline. Basically create some forward momentum and not necessarily dictate whether that momentum is positive or negative. It's just, it started.
The bus!
And at the end of the line, I added some distortion and some other effects to kind of get it, like, just crazy. That way, it's a bit of a climax, at least underneath all of the melodic elements. So the next element is the melodic element. This is a sort of repeating line that sort of gets higher and higher, at least one of the notes that it reaches out and grabs. There is a bit of an ostinato as well, like the da-da-da, da-da-da. That part kind of repeats, but like the note that it reaches to alters progressively. Again, ascending to create further motion. So the next major element in the intro is a staccato pattern between the clarinets and the bassoon, followed by a joining of double bass and cello right before the bus is caught by our robotic hero. So let's take a look at what that sounds like by itself real quick.
Not for long.
Okay, so that's like also the transition, which I think is important to go over real fast while we were there. But basically, this is providing a little bit of contrast between the sort of legato bit that's going on. And also it accentuates the pulse pattern that we had with the bass line, further creating that sense of motion. So yeah, we've also used automation to create intensity by increasing the volume throughout this as well. Part of that is to make room for the dialogue as well and the sound effects, because I felt that it kind of got in the way a little bit. So the first little like sample sound effect I have is a sub boom with also like an impact sound. So this is when she notices the bus is in peril. And there is also a sound effect right there that I should enable. Icy, breathy sort of sample here. Again, he's frozen. It's nice too because you have some of that sort of transient goodness in like the high register there. There's another sample here. I don't remember what this was. Oh, it's that same impact sound from the bus. Again, reinforcing this idea that that sound effect represents the bus. So the next element here provides a little bit of some panning fun here. It's basically a pulse where you have like a left, right sort of thing going on. but you can also hear it kind of shifting as well.
I got it.
So for me, what this does is it is providing a sense of urgency. The time is ticking. And that's sort of what this pulse represents to me, is like, hey, you're running out of time, you need to get there and catch this bus. And also you can notice the automation gets a little bit crazier here. Again, like really emphasizing this idea of panic. The only other element underneath of this is a drone. Now this drone is just straight up until right here where the panning is insane. Absolute chaos. The bus is, rolling around or whatever, and I wanted to represent just that sheer like craziness in the audio spectrum. So you should hear a lot of like really crazy back and forth, like disorienting, sort of almost like motion sickness inducing audio. That's at least that for me, that was the idea. Create like this like chaotic, almost sort of unlistenable sort of like effect.
A kid's looking right at me.
Not for long.
It's pretty weird, huh? But I feel like that provides a very nice, like, chaotic element to this. And, honestly, this scene is a little chaotic. I mean, in a way, I feel like it's kind of implied that, the bus will be fine. That could just be me. But I still wanted to leave that uncertainty because the viewers don't know. And if I can kind of help with the audio to add to the suspense factor, then that's great. Because ultimately, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen to it. And using sort of like this surmounting tension and then inevitable release, I think that it really does benefit the media in that way. So right after this scene with this craziness, so let's just hear the transition real quick. And honestly, I might real quick just mute the I think I'm just gonna mute this real quick so you don't have to listen to it every single time. It is important though. You wouldn't want to be just writing the music without any of the audio. That would be dumb, because you need to hit the cues. The dialogue, that's important. The music is a foundational element. It is to help evoke an emotional response, and I think that it's important that the composer stay out of the way of that stuff. Like, yes, you should take risks as a composer, but if you're not accomplishing the job, which is to essentially set the scene with your audio and your sound effects, then you're really just stroking your own ego, I feel like, because you're not doing it for the scene, you're doing it for your own gratification. And I think that that can be met in the middle by just making sure that you are still trying to fulfill the needs of the scene while still providing your own unique twist as a composer. So, food for thought. Anyway, this is the transition that happens, right? So the bus falls, or is caught, and then basically I have this very breathy sample. Sort of the idea behind that is like either dust settling, like the action has happened, and sort of like the fallout of said action, which in this case is the bus, being caught and all that jazz. Like, obviously that's a very stressful situation. I also will preface that I have absolutely no idea about the show at all. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen this show, is just this one scene. So I have no there's no preface for this. It's just, I kind of just did it. So anyway, the idea with this little bit here was to have sort of that breathy quality where it's kind of like either a sigh of relief, like, holy shit, we didn't die, or, sort of this sort of like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, we're alive, sort of like questioning. So it could kind of be both, but that sounds like this.
Okay. Is everyone okay? Watch your step, kids. Stay behind the bus. All right, easy.
So that first one is sort of a more bright and semi-hopeful sounding one. And then once that fades out, I introduced a darker sample that came in, sort of making you question, is this really okay?
Is everyone okay? Watch your step, kids. Stay behind the bus. All right, easy, one at a time.
What happened?
Before I proceed, I would also like to mention that I added a percussion part here that has some panning where it's like left and right again. But it's like accenting one part of the beat and then switching it kind of like in your ears and whatnot. So for me, what this percussion is all about is, again, sort of creating uncertainty. Things are happening and momentum is there, but where it leads is uncertain. Because I've introduced a bright and a dark sample into the mix, the listener will question whether or not the events that are going to unfold next are positive or negative, because the tone has kind of been set in, like, uncertainly. And what I mean by that is you have this idea that after the bus is saved, that everything's all right. Bright sample comes in, the breath, the sigh of relief. And then a realization. The dark sample comes in and kind of reminds you that, hey, this might not actually be so okay. So this is where everything starts here, where you have this next transition into the car crash scene. So basically, like I was saying before, I have set the stage for uncertainty. At least in my opinion, I've set the stage for uncertainty. I want to show you what this sounds like, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. Is everyone okay? Watch your step, kids. Stay behind the bus. All right, easy, one at a time.
What happened?
This was a mistake. We need to go.
We need to find Icicle.
So there's a couple things going on there, like I had previously mentioned. And one thing I didn't talk about was that icy sample again. When they showed the guy in the suit who had been frozen, I wanted to reintroduce that sample since I've kind of identified that audio cue with him earlier on. Obviously, that's in relation to being frozen, but when you see him in the scene, you can see that he's still got like some like ice bits on him and whatnot. So I just kind of wanted to bring that vibe in there. You know what I'm saying? And also the transition here. So the percussion stops, and then all of a sudden there is this sort of like weird meandering bass line that I found, like a really weird sample that I found that I've manipulated a bit. And yeah, this sample for me continues off of this sort of momentum idea, but in a chaotic way. And I think that having that deviation from this sort of more straight up rhythm, like that dun, 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 but like panning it like the previous section did. This section is a lot more chaotic. And obviously because of the events that actually happen, you will see why. I guess this is the climax of the episode, more or less. So this is kind of like how I did that. Like I said, I had this weird bass line. I have this heartbeat sample, which is more like, it's a slow thing. Do, 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 do. And then also, I think there's a couple other things up here as well, just to kind of like accentuate it as well, like more samples and whatnot. But let's just take a listen to it first. And also, it's important for me to say that I introduced that bass line the moment you see the truck, because foreshadowing. I want you to know that something's going to happen. And I feel like it's pretty clear that this tone that I've set with the rhythmic bass line here is jumbled and sort of like, what is this, you know? So it's not a good thing. I feel like that I've established, without being obvious, super obvious about it, that something not good is going to happen. It was so important for me to just leave that blank. I wanted to hear that car screech so bad. Like, I love that. Like, just hearing just a so good. And like For me, I feel like it's just the right amount of like throwing stuff there. Like, for example, we have a little audio cue right here, which is sort of like wind chimes. It's this pattern 11 right here. It's crazy. It's actually a Spitfire product. Either way, it's a sample library that Spitfire has, and I thought it was cool, so I added that into the mix as well. What was this? I don't remember what this was. Oh yeah, this was that sample. It's all, you know, it's just creating tension and noise essentially. Now, as far as the very end goes, there's one thing I wanted to mention before I play it. There is a sound effect of the wind when you're going to see it in a second where the card is blowing in the wind. And I was trying so hard to make sure that that wind sound effect was audible because I feel like that's really important. I don't think it would have been included if it wasn't important. So I just kind of wanted to mention that real quick. So dude gets hit by the car and then basically it's like, oh shit. Right there. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really proud of that ending. You know, and a lot of the things that I'm saying, some of the things that I've said are subjective. However, I feel like there are a lot of points that you should take to heart. Mainly hitting the cues and also just thinking about what your actual role is in media composition. Like, yes, you want to make sure that there is a nice musical identity, but you don't want to overshadow the fact that you're enhancing something that already exists. You are providing another element into an overall production. So don't make this all about you and your music. Make this about the production. Make this about the show or the movie. Make sure that you are trying to actually fit the cues and be appropriate with the tone. Don't be afraid to experiment and do things that you think maybe wouldn't fit. You won't know until you try. But the fact of the matter is, I think you need to be mindful of the scene. And yes, taking risks is important and it is part of being a composer. But yeah, I think it's important that you do fulfill the job as well, because at the end of the day, that's what you're getting paid to do in a situation like this, in like the actual, you know, industry. So, yeah. And, you know, one final thing that I'd like to say before I end today's video is that I appreciate the fact that Spitfire has provided their customers with this contest to mess around with professional footage. You know, I mean, this is more or less what you would do in this situation. Either way, I feel like with my rendition of this score, I have tried my best to fit the scene and then to just make sure that I'm leaving the space for all the sound effects that they've already provided. So I appreciate anyone that viewed my entry, and I also appreciate anyone that takes the time to watch my videos. So thank you for that for sure. I hope that this video provides you with maybe some helpful insight as far as composing for a project like this. This project took me a couple of days for sure, maybe like a week or two actually, to be honest. But I got a lot of this stuff sketched out within those first 2 or 3 days or whatnot. But again, I just really had to like refine it, and eventually you just have to say, I'm done. You know, like plain and simple. At a certain point, you're going to mess up your work if you add too much. You know, again, like I said before, this is not a situation where you're trying to compose like, you know, a symphony piece. Like you are accenting a scene and you're helping to bring it to life. So alright guys, so that was my breakdown of my score for the Stargirl competition. I hope that some of the things that I've talked about in this video will help you if you are in the process of composing for any sort of media. And as well, I hope that it's interesting just to kind of see how somebody breaks it down. So yeah, I appreciate you watching, and congratulations to the winners. That's going to be interesting to see tomorrow, or I guess today when this video will come out. But yeah, congratulations to the winners of the contest, and I definitely can't wait to see what happens, that's for sure.